Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Riker here with a quick note. I know it's been a light August, but I wanted to get out at least one more podcast, maybe two, depending on how things go. We had some technical difficulties, some things got lost, and then there was a bunch of other stuff that kind of popped up out of left field. But I wanted to say thanks for rocking with the show. And this episode was originally meant to be a Patreon only special one, but we're going to go ahead and give it to y'all. And this is a taste of things to come, the great conversations and all the other stuff that we have on our Patreon. So definitely thanks for continuing to support the show. Shout us out on socials. Hit us up if you got questions. And without any further ado, let's start the show. All right. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Everyday Black Man Podcast, a podcast for authentic black male thoughts. I am Riker, and I'm joined by DJ All Might because Reed and Armstead couldn't be here on time. But we'll still continue here, and they will jump in when they jump in. We've got a great couple of guests here. We've got iconic womanhood coach, also known as Akene, and we have C-Dog here. And I really want to start with Akene and kind of learn a little bit more about her and sort of what her experience has been like with coaching women. But first, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Where are you from?
Sure. I was born in the US, but I was raised in Nigeria. And I came back here for college and never left. I
Okay.
I'm a mom. I have two kids. My oldest just graduated college, and I've been doing this work for a little while, about a little under 10 years. I've been coaching. Prior to that, I was a pharmacist for almost 18 years.
Wow.
And decided to change careers. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. What made you transition from pharmacy into coaching?
So it's interesting when I went to college, I knew I didn't want to be a pharmacist, but I come from an immigrant, pretty traditional African immigrant background. And my mom was very clear, like, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to do something in liberal arts, and that was just not going to be acceptable. My mom was like, simple. You can be a doctor, you can be an engineer, you can be a lawyer, or you can be a pharmacist. So I kind of picked the lesser evil. I started with engineering, actually. But after one semester of chemical process calculations, I was like, okay, that's not going to work. Became a pharmacist, right, for a while. And I thought I would just do it to appease my parents. And then after graduating, I would find something else. But I ended up doing what a lot of people do, is getting stuck in a lane. I kind of got stuck. And I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do, right? So I became a pharmacist. It's good money. I was making over six figures. I got married. I bought a home. I became a mother. And so I was ticking all the boxes, but I was so unhappy. I was so unhappy in my own life. And it was very challenging to share that with people, because people would be like, what are you talking about? You have, this is the life that you wanted, right? Like, no, not really. There has to be more than this. And I just knew something was wrong. And I hated my work. I hate to say it, that for 17 years, I went to a job that I really didn't love. And over each year, I would hate it a little more. And the point came, there's a wonderful saying by Ane Nin, and it says that the day came that the pain to remain in the bud was more than the pain that it took to blossom. And so I always say that day came for me. And I decided that I needed to finally try to live this life that I felt like I was here to live. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it couldn't be this. As we say, like in the South, right? I've heard it said, something's got to give. It ain't finna be me, right? So I knew there had to be a shift. And so I decided to take a leave of absence from work. And during that time, I just started to kind of take care of myself and started to ask those questions, to just reflect. In a way, I took time to find myself. And in my finding of myself, I discovered, I started following the clues to my purpose. So before I left pharmacy, I would have people come to my pharmacy. I used to work for actually. And I remember this one pivotal moment. A woman came to the pharmacy, and she looked like she stepped out of the pages of like Essence magazine. She was an African American woman, gorgeous. She defined the word coiffed, right? And every hair in place, just looking fabulous. And when she walked up, she asked for some help. She wanted something to help her sleep. And so I asked her, just some more questions because I wanted to understand what I could recommend, right? So I asked her, well, tell me what's going on. And she just broke down, started crying right there. And so I took her to the corner and kind of had her sit down and really just held space for her to share. And she started sharing all the things that she was dealing with, all the issues. And it was tremendous. And she said, she was a Christian, I'm a Christian too. And she said something that really deeply resonated with me, but it also connected with me at a very strong level, that there was something wrong about our thought process. She said, I'm so sorry. I should be able to handle this. I know I can do all things through Christ. And I said to her right then and there, just a word came up from inside of me, but you're not required to carry the cross. And
True.
you know? And after that moment, it was like, wow, someone heard me, someone saw me, someone held space for me. I feel supported. She started coming back to the pharmacy, right? She would come back every couple of days and I'm like, do you need medicine? She's like, no, I just want to talk. Can we talk? And that started happening a little bit more. In fact, I remember my boss saying, ma'am, you're not here to talk. You're here to fill prescriptions. So can you decide? And, so when I was reflecting in my time off, I was able to say, you know what, I think there is, and I'd heard the term, the idea of coaching, and I'd heard about it and I started to explore it. And so as I was doing my work, getting my own self help, I then decided, you know what, I got my first certification as a coach and started learning about what it meant to support people. And I just knew that I was called to women. I could, of course, being a woman, I could fully understand the experience. And then I decided to go back to school. I went to Georgetown and studied organizational and change leadership, and then got another certification in social and emotional intelligence coaching, and really just kind of launched this business to support women in coming to themselves and, like I said, discovering a new way to be successful and a new soulful way to be successful.
Hey, that's great. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is R. Reed. So one thing that I noticed with that whole thing with women and them discovering themselves, I find it just quite often that they'll take a pole class before they take anything. I won't call it what you're doing, like an etiquette class of sorts. But why won't they take that extra step to become a better woman versus a man? Like we're expected to do these things. So men take different forms or shapes or do different things in their life in order to make themselves a better woman. How's a pole class gonna be like something that you get women out of versus something to what you're trying to give it to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's based on the way we're socialized, right? So women are socialized to desire to be chosen by men. Men are socialized to choose, actually, right? Men are socialized to focus on mastery and work, and women are socialized to focus on being desirable more than anything. Currently, we're in a season where sexuality is the trade, right? We trade on our sexuality. And so for women, that's currency, right? So, and men are also, it's also currency, right? To be rich, to be financially successful. So each person is trading on the currency that they understand. Now, unfortunately, both of those currencies are weaker currency. The deeper currency, the more lasting currency, is what comes from when we do the inner work, the purpose. So whether it is doing, a lot of men, to your point, will focus on their work and being better, like as far as leadership and development, but many men don't do the inner healing work that is required. The same thing for women, right? Women will focus on their external looks and the things that they think will make them more desirable, but often the inner work is left behind.
Isn't
For
that a
those,
dated? I'm sorry to interrupt. I honestly think you hit the nail on the head, but isn't that dated? And it's like dated well beyond 2000 and let's say 2010, because yes, that was probably an accurate mindset for the women we were speaking of, maybe back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Especially in the information age when technology has made people more visible in their personal lives. But like we've also had 1,001, examples of women who don't do that and they succeed
Yeah.
in this world and don't need a man, in the sense of not in that I'm strong, because I know amongst the consensus of the podcast we all hate to hear I don't need a man. It's like it's not about needing anybody, but it is the fact of wanting to be wanted by somebody
Yeah.
outside of physical stature. Because yes, we all see physical first, but that doesn't keep you around, and that doesn't keep somebody from cheating on you. That doesn't even get you chosen necessarily. You might get chosen for the
True.
night,
True.
but you're not going to be, it's not longevity in that. And what you said, like, it was a lot of food in that, but how many people, how many women, and even men can hear that and see the nutrition in it versus, considering they empty cars because it's not quick money, it's not a quick come up.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love the allegory or the metaphor of food and empty carbs. Yeah, I mean, but that is the struggle, right? And we are daily being programmed. So every single day we are dealing with messaging from the media or wherever, right? That's telling us to behave a certain way because we're living in a giant capitalistic society, right? So, and we are the product. So there is constantly this messaging that's saying, do this, do this, do this. And that's what people are reacting to. I do agree with you that it is dated. There are people that are waking up. We are we're entering the transformational age. So we're beginning to have questions and conversations, and we're going deeper. We're becoming more and more conscious. But still, I mean, just look at the prevalence of surgery. Like we're talking about how many women are doing surgeries and the prevalence of certain things that people are doing, whether men and women. And you see that yes, it is dated, but it is still we're still deeply embedded. It's still something that we're unpacking. And these kinds of conversations that you guys are having are so critical to the transformation, right? Because we have to start having authentic questions and authentic answers and holding space for each other. When I was invited on this, I typically talk a lot to women, but I always love when I get the opportunity to break bread and share minds with men as well, because we need both, right? And it's so critical that we honor the truth of men and the truth of women as we navigate forward into something that is better for all of us, right? So yeah, it is dated, but we begin to do the work. I certainly work with women who are awake or questioning. And even if they come to my work through, I just want to know how to be more successful. Or sometimes women come to my work through, I'm not attracting the kind of man that I want to attract, or I'm not able to, I talk a lot about feminine energy and feminine leadership. And I know there's a lot of conversation about feminine energy now. But when I talk about it, I'm talking about how to learn to integrate and balance. And women come to me sometimes because they have been working so hard in a way that is masculine energy, right? So that boss energy, boss mode, that they're drained, they're depleted, but they're also struggling in their relationships if they're in relationships, or they're struggling to have the kind of relationship they desire. And through that desire, that need, that pain point, they come to my work, and then we start to unpack and we start to go deeper. We unpack some of the wounds that they may have. We unpack some of the false programming that's causing them to behave a certain way and believe certain things. And then
You,
we
you
come up with a new way of being.
you touched
So
on something that made a lot. It hits on something that we talk about regularly on this podcast. When you said that women talk about they don't attract the men that they want,
Yeah.
or the ones that they want to attract. And then we always ask that question because as men, we hold men accountable for the type of women that we interact with and what we attract and what we deal with. But
Mhm.
we're not allowed to do that with women. When they say you are attracting what you're putting out, yet you
Mm.
want the one that you want doesn't have the exterior that you're looking for. And
can I
not
add on to
necessarily
that?
physical, not the physical stature. They don't have the exterior perception.
Can I add
Mm.
on to that?
Yeah.
So I think that's due to their, I think it's called capricious and arbitrary nature. They, I would say, some women think they know what they want, but that type of man has expectations. Someone like Kevin Samuels, like I know people hate him, love him, whatever, but he's telling you these expectations. You can't say you want that man and not all that comes with it. Like there's certain you set the expectation for what you want. He does as well. Then that's the thing that I think women need to really deal with when it comes to that that
Mhm.
that idea of Prince Charming versus what like Prince Charming, like Prince Charming is the king or whatever, but as his queen, you have duties that come with that as well, and that's
Because
the part that they don't get. Well,
we'll
they're
call a
not told.
man we'll call a man naive for wanting that type of woman and upset that the certain baggage that comes with it is there and knowing that's there.
Yeah. I think that I'm not sure that I agree that women have a naturally capricious and arbitrary nature. I think that all people that don't know who they are, whether man or woman, tend to be that way. But when you have a deep understanding of yourself, very few of us have self mastery, very few of us have self awareness, not to even talk about going deeper into self mastery. But when you have a deep sense of who you are, then you can really connect to your authentic desires. Most of us don't actually have a sense of what we want and who we are. We lean into what we are programmed to desire. So, you're not checking to see, okay, let me put it this way. If you know what you're here to do and you know where you're going, you have a destination in mind, and I know I'm going into the mountains or something, then when I think about the kind of car that I want to drive, and this might be a bit crude, so forgive me. I'm not at all comparing women to cars or men to cars. But if I'm thinking about the kind of vehicle that I need, and I know I'm going to be off road, then I'm thinking about a car that has the ability to do what I need it to do. I'm not necessarily thinking, oh, everyone around me is choosing a Maserati. It's not going to get me where I want to go. I know what I'm here to do. And I'm completely comfortable in who I am. But when men are not in that space, they make certain choices. And you're right, we should all be accountable for our choices. Women as well. A lot of women are not even socialized to ask that question of who am I really? What am I here to do? What is my purpose? And therefore, we're not actually looking for purpose partners. We're looking on the superficial, whether it be how she looks, how big her butt is, what she's able to do sexually, or we're looking at men saying, a lot of people equate high value men to men who make six figures and above. I'm not quite sure that that is for me, I would never equate a high value man as that, because
I
money
agree.
is the most basic thing, right? If you both are purpose partners, you can bring in way more once you are aligned, once you understand who you are. So the bigger issues are, what are his core values? Are we in alignment? Do we have the same vision? But you can't ask those questions until you've done your inner work, until you have made peace with yourself and really understand yourself, and you're no longer a puppet to whatever the current programming says. So whether it be the quote unquote gurus of the day that are saying that high value men want this, that, or the other, and high value women this, that, or the other, all of those things I find to be quite reductive, because the truth of the matter is we're all bigger than our bank accounts, our dress sizes. We're bigger than all of those things. We're bigger than the way we look. No matter, you see women trying to fit into a mold, right? Wearing so much makeup, doing the surgeries. You see men also trying to fit into a mold, and none of this is authentic to who we really are. And when I think about our community as people of color, and for me, I'm a diaspora person, right? So I feel very much African American, and I feel very much Nigerian or African as well. And I see it across, right? Whether it's on the continent or here, it is disheartening to me to see two key issues here. One, an adversarial stance. And when we are adversaries, it is the most damaging thing for our community, because we're not meant to be adversaries. It's the same old divide and conquer, but except now it's across gender lines. We can't be adversaries when we're meant to be allies, and our community suffers as a result of it. The other issue that I see, right, is, again, no one is talking about purpose. So if a man chases money at all costs because he wants to be considered a high value man, because that is the only measurement that we're using, and if a woman chases beauty and sexiness at all cost, both of us, both sides, are not looking at purpose. And so we're not elevating the way we're meant to elevate in our communities. And so we have to shift past these superficial, low level conversations and get deeper into, why are we here and what are we here to do, and how can we partner to bring forth these things. So if I see you as my brother and I see that you need healing, then how can I hold space for you to heal rather than demonize you? And if you see me as as your sister, and you see I need healing. How can you do the same for me? Versus each of us attacking each other and each of us being frustrated, and none of us are having a conversation. Because if you think about it, I had a couple once, and I don't do couples, I'm not a counselor, but sometimes in my coaching, and I receive a lot of messages from husbands, and I'm always grateful because I will receive messages from husbands saying, "Thank you for holding space for my wife. We've had a conversation. Something shifted when she came and we talked." Because our work is really about self-actualization of the feminine. And when you are fully self-actualized, it actually makes you more open and receptive to the masculine. When I have conversations with men and women, one of the things that I highlight, especially Black men and women, is that I want you to think about the reality of what our lives look like. When you go out into the world, you went out and your woman went out. You dealt with microaggressions. You're dealing with so much out there. So is she. And both of you come back into the home depleted and drained from a society that was not designed to affirm you. And you come back exhausted and you have nothing left to give, and you're each looking to the other to feed a need that none of you can feed because you're depleted by the world around you. And so because we don't have that understanding, we attack each other versus saying, my God, we both need something. How can we heal before we can so we can survive together and thrive together? And so these are some of the awarenesses that we unpack. And when I talk to women, a lot of the women that come to my work, they are passionate about their relationships. They want to be better so that they can be better for their husbands, for their children. They want to be better as single women so that when they do align, they can choose wisely, right? Because to your point, we have to be accountable for our choices. They can choose wisely. They can attract better men because they are better themselves too. And I pray that that work is also being done for our men as well, because we both deserve it.
Oh, do you think that's just more of a Western problem due to like feminism, black men being, I would say, escorted out of their homes in the late 70s, 80s due to them, quote unquote, being poor and is kind of better off? Well, it was better off at one time to not have a man in your house versus having a man in your house. And then, like, women I talk to who are like in their 40s, like, let's say late 50s, they say in the 90s they were pushing this to their daughters where like my sister and them, like their mothers told them that you don't need no man. At the same time
Mm,
they were married. Like like what was
yeah,
that about? Like I was just like, what was that about? Like you were married. Like why would you tell your daughters that? Like to be more quote unquote independent. But at the
yeah,
same time, my parents have been married for as of this date, 37 years actually.
yeah,
Um and she says that my mom pushed that to her, and even my girlfriend says her mom pushed that to her. Said it was a big thing in the 90s to tell them you don't need a man, blah blah blah. You can do this, do that. But I don't remember any kind of just coming from the male standpoint. I don't remember my dad telling me anything like that when it comes to like women. He never told me I didn't need a woman or yeah, like
yeah,
anything to that degree. I just think it's so strange.
yeah,
Overall thought that because like I think that's very common in that era because I've talked to I would say at least 6 women who had parents around that age and their women their mom taught them that you don't need a man to that
yeah.
degree.
I think that cuts across actually, not just here in the Western. In the West, I think you see that in modern, not just modern actually. You'll see it even in Nigeria. I saw a lot of that. I don't think that's necessarily feminism. I think feminism as a whole is simply the idea of gender equality and equity, right? But it's being translated and conflated with misandry, which is a hatred of men currently, right? And I think those messages that you heard that some mothers were pushing came out of a place of bitterness, came out of a place of feeling trapped and woundedness. So they never, when a woman is in a marriage that isn't optimal, that is painful, that is damaging, and she feels as if she cannot leave, often that will create a deep level of bitterness and resentment. Perhaps and your father may never have said such things, thankfully, right? But if you meet a man who also feels trapped and also feels like he could not leave, you will also hear him say certain messages as well. There are many men who teach their sons can't trust a woman. I've heard many things along those lines. You can never trust a woman, this, that, and the other. again, promoting these adversarial stances. And these things come from places of bitterness. They come from a place of brokenheartedness that was never healed. But when we can heal and say, you know what, I was with somebody, I'm in a toxic relationship, I was in a toxic relationship, and this happened and that happened, and I can unpack it, then you can have the opportunity to actually be different. But when your heart is broken, the scripture says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. When your heart is broken, nothing can come forth that is healing. And so many people have broken hearts, and we just keep moving, especially in our community, because we don't really give room for the ability to say, gosh, my heart is broken. You see women and men go through damaging, painful relationships, especially our men, because men aren't even allowed to say, that hurt me. Wow, what she did broke me. Men aren't allowed to say that, because if they say that, it's the idea is that they're weak.
Weakness, correct.
But these things are necessary. So, I mean, there's so much to say, right? And I guess we could talk for so long. I wish I could stay longer. I do have a hard stop, but I just want to say thank you guys for creating a space for you guys to have this sort of discourse and to keep, discussing it and keep it, inviting our voices in as well. So I want to say thank you for having me.
Definitely.
Yeah. I like your voice because it's positive, because you speak of the war that's going on, but you speak of another way to go through this battle. Like, it's not even a battle. Like, come on, like, what are we fighting for? We're supposed to be on the same team.
It's very, very inviting.
Yes, definitely, Kenny. We really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Please come
We
again.
thank you for your time. Definitely come again. Do you want to give your socials so that people can find you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Instagram at iconicwomanhood_coach, at iconicwomanhood_coach. And my website is Iconic Womanhood. I also have a podcast actually called Iconic Womanhood. So, you can find me in any of these places. I really appreciate you for inviting me. Thank you guys.
You're certainly welcome. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Same here.
Looking forward
Take care.
to it.
God
All right,
bless.
you too.